Hi everyone and welcome to Sonic Academy's Make Music with Logic Pro 10 with me, Chris Agnelli. Over the next few videos we're going to take a look at making a track, arranging the track, mixing it and exporting in Logic Pro 10. This is a beginner's course for somebody who's never done this or has just recently purchased Logic Pro 10, thinking of moving to it from another program, or as an Ableton user, or Cubase user, curious to see how Logic works. It's a vast program with a lot of functionality. I've been using it for 15 years and still every day kind of discover something new and a new way of doing something or a quicker way of doing something. So we're literally going to scratch the surface here, but we're going to take it very slowly but build a really great track and show you all the different options open to you in this level 1 course. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at an overview of Logic and sort of the main GUI and how it is laid out and sort of the core principles and concepts behind it. When we open up Logic, we can open up in a few different states. We can open up our last project, so if you're in the middle of making something, hit save, shut the computer down, power it up again, open up Logic, it will open up in the state that you left it. We can open up an empty project, or we can open up a template, and we can create our own templates. So if we've got if you're like me, you're kind of creating music in a similar vein, you can save, particular kits that you always use and pads that you always use and save that as a template. And then when you come to do a track or a remix, it's much quicker and it's all, all your reverbs and stuff are there. But there are factory templates that come. Hip hop, again, would open up instrumentation sort of common to that genre, like 808s and stuff. Songwriters will open up drummers, acoustic drummers and live basses. So if you're a singer-songwriter, it'll open up a mic channel with some really nice effects on it. Orchestral would open up loads of woodwind, strings, blah blah blah. But we're going to go for empty project and start with the blank canvas. And we hit choose. And the first thing we need to define is what type of track. There are currently no tracks in Logic. You can see it's blank here. This is where all our tracks reside. So we have a few different options and we'll go quickly through what these options are. Software instrument. Logic comes with a host of software instruments, from vintage pianos to samplers to drum synthesizers to FM synths, monophonic synths, you name it. There are also third-party manufacturers who make synths. Anna, Sonic Academy's very own synth, and soon-to-be released Kick. These are software instruments. They are replications of hardware. So rather than have a studio with tons of hardware keyboards, these manufacturers have modeled and computerized these synths and put them into a nice little graphical user interface that you can use, and they're called software instruments. So we can get sounds out of them and noises and store audio files in them and manipulate things in them. An audio track, anything we want to record into Logic. Logic has the ability to record audio, so anything from a microphone, anything from a guitar, a jack input, a synth, anything you can think of via your sound card. You can plug in microphones or keyboards, or you have a big mixing desk and it can all go into Logic and you can record several tracks at once and then manipulate that audio, speed it up, change the pitch. If I sing into this microphone, I can correct the pitch, I can correct the timing, I can change the timing. It's really flexible and quite incredible what we can do nowadays with audio, and it just treats it like a piece of elastic. Then we have a drummer track, kind of like a software instrument, but it's got its own big interface. It's native to Logic, so it's new in 10, and it's a massive library of drums that we can move sliders and get different feels, get different loudness, complexity, make the pattern simple, different types of drummers. These beautifully recorded kits that are just stunning. We can have fills, and it can also predict our song. If we put in markers, it can predict that this is now a pre-chorus, so we're going to open up the drums a little bit more, and then it knows the next marker says chorus, and it knows now let's get a bit more frantic with the drums. It's very clever, really well thought out, but doesn't hugely apply to the EDM world. But I'll show you that we do use Drummer, and we can take some of its patterns and grooves and apply them to drum machines and sort of bring them into our world. External MIDI and guitar and bass. External MIDI, again, if you have external keyboards, we can route them through Logic, much like you would audio. And guitar and bass, similar to audio, it's you route it through your sound card and into audio. So let's create a software instrument. And let's have a look at, we have only got output 1 and 2 on this sound card. Some other sound cards, I used to have one but that had 16 outs, and I went to a mixing desk and we mixed there. But nowadays I kind of mix in the box. And we have this open library ticked, and that will open up the library of sounds and patches that come with Logic. And we only want one track. You can have 10, you can open up 10 software instruments immediately if you want. So we'll only open up one and hit create, and it opens up. You notice 2 windows opened up. Our library, if we have that open library box ticked, by default we have a bright synth string. So what it's done, it's inserted a soft synth, some plug-in effects, and a bus, and opened up our library. So the library is where we can store patches. We can have user, so these are things that I've kind of liked and saved. Let me see what's going on there. Oh, we don't have legacy cell. So there's a bass, Chris off bass. This is an off bass I kind of liked. So I stored it as a patch, and it stores the soft synth, the effect, and the bus. But Logic, the designers at Logic, the sound designers, have created a whole host of patches to get you started and to get into a quick area. So let's have a look at strings and full strings. So it'll open up an EX24, which is a sampler. Oh, we don't like those strings. Let's go cinema strings, and it'll change. And it adds in an EQ and a bit of an echo. Or we can go, let's open up an arpeggiator, a bass, and an Italian disco. So what it does, it's these are a chain that has been stored, and so once we select our patch from our library, we go over to this section here, and this is our mixer. So this shows you the currently highlighted track, and it's like if you can sort of think of a traditional mixer, we'll go from the top down. This is our patch name, so you can see Italio Disco Patterns. It's inserted there. This bar here, if we've compression going on, this has a meter here to let you see quickly how much compression is happening. This thumbnail box here is our EQ, so we can get a small oversight of what's going on. If I double click the EQ, you can see the EQ curves are the same. Then we have MIDI effects. So we have a thing called arpeggiator, which if I switch off, I hit one note. It's just hitting one note, on, off. If I switch on the arpeggiator, it will repeat those notes in a rhythmical way, sync to the tempo. If I change the note, if I hit 2 notes at once, if I hit several notes at once, it'll play different patterns across, and we can go in and edit, you know, that note and speed things up. Change the pattern. have it going across octaves. So those sort of very pulsy bass lines and stuff sometimes are used by arpeggiators, are created with arpeggiators. So we have a host of different MIDI plugins that will affect the MIDI notes, that'll, you know, trigger a chord when we hit one note, or repeat the notes, or randomize various different aspects of what's going on with the notes, or transpose it, or change the velocity. So we'll have a look at those in probably level 2. The next slot we have is where we select our synths. These top box is everything that comes with Logic. So we have drum kits, FM synth, ensemble, monophonic, polyphonic synths, 2 synthesizers, one big, one small, vocoder, a sampler where we can load audio files in and create samples. So those strings were recorded in the studio, and those samples, those audio files were then put into the sampler, and we can do different things called layers and map them across the keyboard and manipulate them with filters and stuff. Retro synth is kind of 4 old synth engines in one, being a subtractive, a sync, wavetable, and FM. And it's kind of modelled on old 70s, early 80s synth keyboards. Sculpture's crazy modelling synth that is very complex and very scary looking. Drumbeat, Ultrabeat is a drum synthesizer. We can create, through oscillators, we can create drum sounds, or we can import samples into it and program beats. Very good. And then our vintage stuff, organ, clav, and piano. Then we have third-party stuff. So there's Sonic Academy's own synth, Native Instruments, Korg, all these sort of third-party people create their own synth as well. Then we have our effects. So we can have amps and pedals. So these are Amp Designer, guitar amps, pedal boards, delays, distortions, dynamics, things like compressors and expanders and multi-pressors and stuff. EQs, filters, so we can have filter banks, auto filter, imaging, so that's stereo spread or directional mixer, metering, you know, like correlation meter or level meter or tuner, see if you know, if you're playing guitars and stuff, if it's in tune. Modulation would be chorus and phasers. Pitch can correct pitch, but we've a better pitch correction tools now. Reverb and specializer, things like exciter, denoise, and sub bass adds, you know, sub harmonics in, and utilities again, and test oscillator and in-outs. And then we have audio units, and these are all again third-party manufacturers. They're plugins that will work within Logic. Then we go down to buses. And this is where the signal gets split. We don't have to have these buses on, but if we want to split the signal will come down here from the S2 through all these effects, and then come to bus 1, and we're saying take a little part of that signal and send it over here, and send the rest to the main output. It goes over here through these effects and back out, and this mix back in. Why do we do this? Well, we do this kind of, I'll give you an example of reverb. We would tend to bus reverbs for 2 reasons. If I insert a reverb, if you're in a great hall and you do a clap, your ears will hear the original sound of the clap because it's beside your head, and then a few milliseconds later it'll hear the reverberated sound come to your ears. So you'll always hear an original and then the reverberated sound. So that's why we would bus reverbs. If we inserted the reverb over it, we would hear no original and just this reverberated sound. So we do need the original to make it sound like a proper natural reverb. The other thing is, we tend to set up a big reverb and a small reverb in a mix, and we can bus several instruments to that one reverb. It gives a sense of it being in the one space for one. Plus, it's kind of efficient because we only have one reverb open, but we're sending several instruments rather than having several reverbs over all those instruments. Again, for you know, drums, we can bus all the drums to one particular compressor, and that compressor can, what we call, glue the mix together, can sort of make those drums feel as if it's from the same kit or the same sort of vibe. It's kind of hard to explain, but once we get into the mix down, we can start to show you that. So buses are dead handy. We can bus, kicks, ghost kicks over to these things for our side chaining. Again, this is things we'll get into once we start programming. Output. This sound card has only got a stereo output. You can have cards with 8, 16, 24 outputs, and you can select your output there. Groups, we can group several instruments together, group drums together, and then we have automation. So once we come to write in, cut off frequencies or a low cut on a kick drum, we can automate all these. These are different types of automation states. So we can, if we've recorded the automation, we put it into read, so it reads it back. If we want to write the automation, we hit write. Latch and touch are two different sort of things. If we're in automation and we're in record, we can latch it or touch it. As soon as we touch it, it starts overwriting and leaves it where you've left the fader, say, or latch will overwrite, and then once you let go, it'll return to its original state. Pan or balance. If it's a stereo track, it'll be a balance. If it's a synth, it'll be pan. This is our fader. This is what our meters are peaking at, our peak. Mute and solo. So we can mute the track, or we can solo the track and hear it in solo. And if I click on bus, it'll select the different buses. It'll show me the bus here, or select stereo out. It'll show me what's over the output. Quickly within those guys, there's 3 different boxes. A power button, same for all of them. An edit button that'll open up the plugin, open up the ES2, and a drop down menu that'll allow you to select a different. So if we want retro synth instead of ES2, and there it'll open it up. Then we go over to our track area, so we can switch these guys off. We can start arranging. We can record some MIDI parts in, or drop in some audio files. We've recorded some audio files. We can start to copy things up and create a new track. And if this copy things down and I don't like that, we can delete it. So this is where the building blocks of the track can start to happen. And so let's go back to our inspector. Let's go back to library, and let's arpeggiator. We can reinsert the Italio Disco. So then we have this reveal tab here, and we have auto zoom. So this can make, if we have several tracks, once you start building a track, you can get loads of tracks here and get very sort of cluttered. Auto zoom will, whatever track you've highlighted will expand, so you can see it kind of nice and big. Splitted playhead, that's where this is your playhead. So if we have it here, let's create a region. So we've got a 1 bar region here. If I click this splitted playhead, it chops it. There you go, it splits. We can delete that. If we're starting to do editing and stuff. If we have 2 regions, we've copied up, we can click the join button. We can highlight both, and it just makes it one big pattern. So sometimes if you get into a big song and you've got these little slivers to copy up, it can get a bit fiddly. So what we can do is highlight all and hit join, and there you go. It makes it into one big region. We can bounce regions. So if we've played in a synth part, we can bounce that out to an audio file. We can move the playhead. We can repeat sections, cut sections. This is where we get into editing our arrangement. Our locators, we can zoom zoom out, and colors. We can color these regions. So let's change the color from green to lovely pink. We'll start coloring things because I have certain sort of systems of coloring drums, synth, bass, just so we can see quickly what things are. You know, once an arranged becomes quite big and complex. Moving along the top screen, we have smart controls, and these controls you can define these. These are kind of predefined, but we can edit them and change the definition of what they do. So what I'm doing with this one, cut off. This knob has been told to affect this knob. So when I turn it, so when we switch on smart controls, the guys at Apple have thought, right, these are going to be the most commonly used controls that people will want. So they've laid them out as cut off, resonance, decay, reverb. So that's effect, and they've said this knob is to affect this bus button here. And we can have up to 12 smart controls per channel, so we can, you know, change these, change that control, glide. Say we don't want glide and we want to affect the arpeggiator speed, we can go in here and hit learn, and we can tell it to learn this button to do that. Really great for not opening loads of, sometimes you can have an ES2 open and you can have a channel EQ, and then, you know, the screen starts to get cluttered very quickly, and you're going, oh right, I want to look at the EQ and I want to go over the smart controls. You can define your workflow much quicker. Mixer. This is our mixer button over here. So think of it like a traditional mixing desk. It's a replication of this. This just shows you the channel that you've got highlighted, or the track you've got highlighted, and the bus if you tap it, or the output. But this is all the tracks. So once we start building our mix, let's just shut down. So there's the reverb. We can solo it. Add more. So we can listen to that reverb and go, oh, we want that more reverb. Let's make it bigger, big sort of. Take off, and we can start to mix things here and get an overall picture of our mix. And then we have our editors for editing MIDI notes. So let's record something and let's. So there we can see the MIDI notes I've just recorded in. You can see this key focus. Now what I don't like about Logic 10 is the key focus, this thin blue line. It needs to be much brighter for me. So we need to click on somewhere in this area here, and you'll see the blue line now is around this box, and that's our key focus. So we have a piano roll, familiar to most people using DAWs these days. These notes aren't on time, so we can highlight them all and quantize them, and it now moves everything bang on the beat. We can have quarter notes, 8 notes, 16ths, 20. You know, we can define what triplets, 16 with a swing, 5 tuplet 4 for very weird timings, and we can have strength. We can soften the quantize. We can have a bit of a swing on it. So this is where we would edit all our MIDI notes, our velocities. So we highlight. We want that to be louder. This one to be. And some of the notes are coming off a bit early, so we can again highlight. We have all these different functions here. And we want to trim, and we want to note end to following notes, and it pushes all the notes to the, so they play to the next note. So again, there's all these functions. We can transform, we can double the speed, half the speed, we can humanize, change the velocity, change the note length, but we'll get into all that in a while. We can edit velocities here. We can also edit the pitch bend. So if I select pitch bend and draw in some data, so I'm double clicking, creating these dots. So we can do all sorts of crazy pitch bendy things. Or we can have pan modulation if we use the model wheel to modulate some part of the synth, or foot control, or portamento time, all sorts of different continuous controller data, that stuff is called. Score. If you're into orchestral type music or into film score stuff, you have really extensive score editor. And step editor, which used to be called hyper editor. With MIDI, we can have lots of different data going on underneath. Things like pan, modulation, pitch bend, poly pressure, program changes. And this is where we can edit all that data. We can, if we have several bits of data, if we have a pitch bend, a modulation, a program change, and something else going on, we'd have to constantly flick through this menu and look at all the different sets of data. Whereas with step editor, we can see it all in one lane, and we can squash that up, zoom out, and draw the different velocities in. Again, we can do that pitch bend thing if we select a pencil and then pan. So yeah. So step editor, score editor, I don't use a huge amount of. I'm always in the piano roll. And then we have our transport controls. Fast forward, rewind, play from beginning, play from beginning turns into stop once we hit play, record. Then we have our display. This is the display I normally use with our SMPTE, which is linked to frames that you would get in films and TV. So if you're writing for picture, these go up in 24th. That's a second, minute, hour. This is the point at which we're in this song, the beats and bars, our locators, our tempo, our time signature, number of beats, our divisions. We can have, if you notice this grid, it's on 16ths. We can change that to 8ths, which is half the amount of grids, or 30 seconds, which is double the amount of 16ths. MIDI in and out, this gives me a readout of the MIDI coming in. CPU load, you can see that we're using some CPU there, not loads. Hard drive load, so if we've got loads of samples coming off our hard drive, it'll let you see what's going on there. Cycle, on, off. A tuner, if you've got a guitar attached, the tuner is now built up there. Your count-in, on or off. Let's change that display to make it smaller again. And event list, kind of like the piano roll, displays the same information. If we highlight that note, you can see it's here. I can change the length in here. If I change the length here, it'll update here. I can change the value. That's velocity. And you see it turns it down. I can change the note. So just a more numerical editor. This is for editing your markers. You can have several markers along your timeline, and you can change the positions of them. You can name them and have the length. Tempo, again, we can have as many tempos as changes as you want in the song. So if we're trying to follow a you know, traditional song, we can have tempo lifts and stuff in here, and this is where we can define our signature, time signature, and our key. And again, we can change keys. If you're going to do a big boy band number, you can change the key halfway through. We can change time signatures halfway through from say 4/4 to 3/4. Does happen sometimes, very rarely. Very clever bands tend to do it. There's an REM song that does it, the name of which escapes me now. Notes, we can type in notes here. You know, if we're listening, what I would use this for is when we're coming near the end of the mixdown, I'd play through the mixdown and just sit here and jot down notes of the mixdown, and then go back through and change and do the changes that I need. Loops, Apple Loop Browser. So again, Apple comes with an absolute ton of Apple loops. Apple loops are audio files that have had little transient markers put in, so Logic knows the tempo and can manipulate the tempo. So let's stick in something beats. Okay, take off the piano roll. Now, this is an audio file, so it can't go onto the audio track. If we just drop it here below, it's going to create automatically a new audio track, and it has inserted this audio file. Say we think, oh, we need this to be faster, so we can change the tempo to 132, and it will automatically update this audio file to follow the tempo. So there you go. Immediately we've got a mixture of soft synth and audio playing within Logic. Let's just return that display. And then our project, our media, what audio files we have got in our project. The media, if we want to bring anything in from GarageBand, iTunes, or old Logic, and then all files. If I go to home, here's a folder. All my audio samples reside in this folder, so I can quickly go to drum machine samples and just flick through, hit the play button, and say, oh yeah, I like that cymbal at the start. So I just drag and drop it in. And then I can drop toms. Tom here. Not the best program beats, but there you can see we can just quickly drag and drop and start getting ideas together. So guys, there's a quick overview of Logic. These are just magnification buttons and how things are dragged and dropped. See, I can smart controls. These are our editing tools and all the different functions. So we'll start to sort of explore these a bit further in the next video. We're going to start building our track. I'm going to start off with a audio file of a kick drum. I'll show you a couple of different ways that we can treat that kick drum through some either using samplers or drum synths or just programming it in the arrange page. So in the next video we're going to look at the kick drum.